We're going to another Toronto question. Please, could we keep the questions short so we can have more people asking questions? Thank you.
Sorry, yes, I'll keep it short. I'm Carmel Smyth, a longtime reporter and producer, and now president of the union. And I got to say, after 20 years of covering news, I've never seen anyone sell cutting 1,500 jobs as a positive. It's amazing. Your speechwriter could work with us. But anyway, and are there going to be more cuts? Well, to quote Ms. Conway, absolutely, from the paper today. I do have a question. If you're cutting 25% of the jobs and half the real estate, it's hard to believe that you're not going to cut locations. And if you are going to keep a location open, what's your version of keeping it open? A one-person bureau?
Is that the end of the question?
Yes.
Carmel, I'd like to tell you that in my 7 years here at CBC Radio-Canada, the most painful things I've had to do is to stand in front of you and 3 times adjust an annual budget with substantive cuts and substantial cuts. It's probably, for you guys, puis les personnes à Montréal, puis partout dans notre réseau, the toughest thing to hear. Now, we're done. This has to stop. We have to give ourselves a financial model and a structure that works. In 5 years, and that's what you have to look at, in 5 years, we have to be a smaller broadcaster. Or we're going to keep doing this every single year because the model's broken. We've said that many times. There's a structural deficit, meaning that we can't balance our budget on a yearly basis. The revenue lines right now are not holding. You saw that. Ad revenues are migrating onto. We need to do something about this. We are taking the leadership necessary to do this by ourselves. That's why, when you look at where we're going to end up, we're going to end up in a much better place. We're going to end up with a broadcaster that's going to be mobile, very relevant in the regions. There are going to be no stations that are going to be closed because I strongly believe, and so do our team, that you have to be in the regions to be a public broadcaster. And we actually think that the models that we've built, the Hamilton model, for example, which is a digital place, other models that we've sprung over the last 3 or 4 years, because as you heard us, 2015, our strategy 2015 was about 3 things. And the second thing was being in the regions. That is continuing. So, no, unless it's already a one-person bureau, nothing's going to become a one-person bureau.
Can I ask, why can't we had such high hopes for you and for your board. Why can't your most embarrassing moment being standing up in Parliament and asking for more money, for better funding, for the things that we need to do the mandate the way we should be doing it? We want you to be our champion, Hubert. We need you. Why can't you stand up and say, help us, give us the funding we need?
So, you assume that we have not done that. We have. In the context of this plan, we went to the minister, we explained our plan, we explained where we wanted to go, we asked for 2 things, 2 important things. We resurrected the conversations around a credit line, and we wanted one-time money to help us with the severance costs that these cuts over time are going to do to us, to our cash. And we were turned down.
Resign in protest.
Resign in protest. You know, let's put things in perspective. The last time CBC Radio-Canada had an increase in budget was 1973. 1973. All the public broadcasters in the world have the same kind of issues we have. You saw what's happened at the BBC. You saw the ABC. My friend Mark Scott, my champion, my friend Mark Scott, who had never suffered in the last 7 or 8 years, because Mark and I are the 2 guys that are leading the public broadcasters the longest on the surface of the globe. Okay? So in Australia, Mark Scott now is going through cuts with his government. So we're not alone. We have a plan. We have a great team. We're going to deliver on that plan. And Sarika, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, let's have an Apple moment. And let's have some innovation. We look forward to it. And just one last little comment, Ms. Conway. When we read in the paper, more cuts? Absolutely. You know that's very hurtful.
I would just offer, and I'm not defensive, I'm a person who's pretty able and square my shoulders, and I'll take my share of criticism. I think when you're taking a shot that's just to make you feel good, I'm going to call you on it. I was asked, will there be more cuts? I said there will absolutely be more cuts. There was no glee, there was no celebration around that, nor would there ever be. So, you know, as a journalist, I expect better. I was asked, I answered honestly.
Why not show
I didn't
regret,
answer.
a little compassion? Unfortunately, yes, there may be more cuts. We can't help it. I'm very sorry it may happen. Why not show some compassion for the families that you are going to be throwing out of a job?
I'll work on my interview technique going forward. I'm happy to take the feedback. It was a question asked of me in the context of the upfronts, so I had a whole series of questions being asked about me, of me about the primetime schedule and how we were shifting our direction. And at the very end of that interview, I was asked by the Toronto Star reporter, will there be more cuts? That was how I answered. My apologies.
Thank you.
We're going to Montreal now for an email. A live question from Toronto.
I'll just adjust the microphone here. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is John Corcelli. I've been in this business for over 30 years. I've worked at CBC for the past 10, and it's been a privilege. It continues to be a privilege, I'm happy to say. I think a lot of people, just a quick comment, and I have a question, and I'll keep it as briefly as possible. People in the private industry are probably going to be saying to themselves about today's announcement that you're probably about 10 years too late. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. My question to you there is to Hubert. Thank you very much. Back in April, in an interview on The National, you said that as far as changes at CBC were concerned, quote, everything is on the table. In light of that statement, what's in your plan regarding changes in corporate governance? Thank you.
Corporate governance in terms of?
Well, the board of directors, who are conspicuously and honest men at all of these announcements, number one. Number two, whether or not you're going to change any of that corporate governance by probably introducing ideas such as an elected board of directors, for example, and an elected president, and maybe an elected VP or two.
Guys, corporate governance, I can't do anything about corporate governance. Corporate governance is a government policy. The government decides who sits on the board. I don't change the board. I have no say in corporate governance at CBC Radio-Canada. So that question should be asked eventually to government, to our minister, and what he or she at that time, whoever is, does. We don't determine our own corporate governance.
Well, I'm disappointed by that because I think that it's a key factor into the future. Whether you can do it or not, can you not step outside of your comfort zone and introduce these ideas?
Well,
is there not a meeting in which the board of directors cannot toss around these ideas? Because I can guarantee you that not just myself, but a group of dedicated CBCers have introduced this conversation to me personally, and I think it's long overdue. And if you're not prepared to do that, then I can't help but express disappointment. And again, maybe it may be time for you to step down. And I know that that's a tough question, and I know you can handle it.
It's not a tough question.
Well,
it's not something I control. I don't decide the corporate governance of CBC. We're not a private corporation. We're not a public corporation. Our shareholder is the government. We have nothing to say on the governance. It's in the Broadcasting Act. I don't change the Broadcasting Act. The government changes and legislates how we work. So what we can do is change our infrastructure, our management teams, the choices we made. We can build a plan. The government doesn't decide this plan. We do. It's our plan. We are going to make ourselves a public broadcaster that's mobile, that's smart. We are going to give ourselves a line of credit. Through our own operations, we are going to determine this. We're going to control the things we can control. I can't control corporate governments of the government. I can't control changes in the Broadcasting Act. And the last thing I can't control is the amount of money that the government chooses to give us on the government appropriation. That right now stands at $1.034 billion a year, and we're working very hard that it doesn't go down. So that's what I can control. This plan delivers on those promises, the things that we can control. I'm sorry, it's not a question of me not wanting to answer the question. It's just that we don't control our own corporate governance.
Thank you.
We really are out of time, and unfortunately, this will be the last question from Toronto today, and there will be follow-up from this discussion, but we'll take your answer, your
I'd like
question.
my question as
Okay.
well taken, please. I've been standing here for almost 10 minutes.
There's also people waiting in Montreal, but we're going to
Okay,
lose the
I'll-
line.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
here's my issue, and it's to pick up on the last remark that you made. And that is, if you have no control, as you say, or have no influence whatsoever on the government appropriation, this puts you in the role of being an enabler and an implementer of government cuts year after year. Moreover, you cannot offer any guarantee that there won't be more cuts down the line. And I think it's really important to ask ourselves, whose interest does this serve? In the process of consultation, I know you got letters from people like Cecil Clark, the mayor of Cape Breton, talking about how Cape Breton isn't being properly served right now, even with conventional media. Deputy Chief Alvin Fiddler up by Thunder Bay, talking about the significance of the loss of Voyage North. You know, we're not serving that community as well as we could right now. Bob Elliott heads amateur sports as a multifaceted amateur sports organization in this country, you know, including on the podium and stuff like that. He talks about the hit that's going to be taken in the sports legacy in this country by the very fact that, you know, we're now in a break-even universe. Here's the issue, right? Like, we are tearing into our existing capacity, into our existing strengths to move into a mobile world. I have nothing against it. I've got a smartphone, but I've also got a television, I've got a radio, and I've got a laptop. I was working here, I didn't introduce myself, my name's Camrao. I was working here as a news producer on 9/11. You know what happened? The cell networks went down. You want to have many different capacities as a national broadcaster. Alan Gofenko, who's one of our location presidents up in the north, has talked about how we don't, you know, it doesn't exist right now. That if you're not on radio, if you're not on conventional television, you're not there for people. So to the question, you know, I really want to hear from you. You know, we know the board of directors entirely appointed by the Conservatives. We know you've been appointed by the Conservatives. We know many of you are past donors to the Conservative Party. We know that this is a rich country. We know that there have been, for instance, corporate tax cuts that have been offered year after year after year that offer tens of billions of dollars of breaks to corporations. Can you not think of anything in terms of advocacy for the public broadcaster and a public appropriation? Was that even on the agenda at your last meeting with the board of directors? Did you even contemplate going to ask for a reversal of the DRAP cut? Did you even contemplate it? Was it even there?
All right, there's a lot in your comment. You can applaud if you want. Okay?
Pardon?
I said you can applaud if you want. So let's go back to a few things because there was a lot in there.
Yeah, sure.
I want to go back to governance. I don't decide who my directors are. They don't decide who their president is. The corporate governance framework comes from the Broadcasting Act. We have no power unless the government wants to change an act to do so. Then, I'm not a political person. I'm sorry to tell you. I have no political color. And I wasn't appointed because I'm blue, red, orange, green, whatever the color you want. So let's take that away. I was appointed because somebody thought that I could actually make a difference in the public broadcasting environment, and my background was appropriate for that. Once I'm in, because of the way the system works, My job is to be an advocate for the public broadcaster and to manage it to a better place. The better place is what this plan will give you in an environment where you will be more mobile, where the tough choices we have to make, where and I mean, the whole of the country a few years ago was in the middle of a recession. Cuts were made to all the different departments in the country, and what I'm trying to tell you is that we managed CBC Radio-Canada through our efforts, all of us, through that time. We can't resize the broadcaster every second year.
You can't guarantee more cuts then. You also can't, right? This is
What
what you're
this
saying. You're
plan does,
powerless.
This plan, on the contrary, we, with this plan, took charge of our future. We have a vision. We have a model that when we get to 2020 is going to allow us to have some margins of maneuver. And you're right. I can't guarantee what the public policy decisions of the government of Canada, whether it's the Conservative right now or whoever is going to be elected in 2015 in October, what they're going to decide about public broadcasting. We influence, we push, we talk on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, and we are there. That's what I can guarantee you, that this team will continue to advocate for public broadcasting, that this team will deliver on the plan that you have now, and that in 5 years, assumptions being what they are, we're going to be in a much better place than we are right now. Because we're going to be focused, smaller, mobile, and more relevant. And we are not going to reshape this broadcaster every single year. That's my promise to you.